Welcome back, soil mates. For this episode, we have called it Unground World of Coffee. And I'm joined here by producer superstar Claire Mackenzie. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Rich. Nice to see you.
We thought it would be quite fun to dive into the world of coffee, which apparently is the second most consumed drink in the world, second to water, and a drink that certainly both of us knew very little about in terms of where it comes from, where it's grown. Is it grown regeneratively? Is it not? Is it fair on the farmers? Is it not? And so what we did was get together a guest list of passionate experts that know the answer to these questions. So who did you bring to the table, Claire, for this episode?
Well, amazing person. We did for 6 Inches of Soul film. It was screened at COP28, and a woman called Heather Terry watched it, and we were in contact afterwards, and she shared her company called Good Sam Foods, and via there she works with loads of farmers in South America and sells coffee. And her passion and her drive to look after farmers, the soil, the land, to get the right price, to get everyone to drink healthier and better products is incredible. And it's been an emotional, very emotional journey for her, and she's worth following and looking at the stories. Her Instagram really brings the farmers and the projects to life. It's a very beautiful thing. So I'm really excited to have her and her deep passion and connection with all of the growers.
Yeah, she's an amazing human. And I also managed to find a couple of amazing humans. The first is Gally from Buena Vida Specialty Coffee, who is bursting with passion for the regenerative agriculture movement and a big proponent of that direct relationship between the coffee drinker and the farmer. And she was an incredible guest, and I'm looking forward to chatting with her. And she brought along with her one of her farmers. She represents multiple farmers down in Costa Rica where she lives, and the farmer's called Roberto. And I'm really excited to kind of learn from the ground how he grows his coffee and what makes it different to others out there on the market. But we also wanted to get a barista in the mix. So who did we find for that, Claire?
Well, I think it was Vargali, wasn't it? So we found Marcus, who's in Oxford in the UK. His company's called Roots. And, wow, he's very passionate. But sadly for this, right now when you're listening, he couldn't make it because he was in Japan, and the time difference was too extraordinary for us to cope with the UK, the US, Costa Rica and Japan. So you will hear from him in part 2. So please listen to that.
Yeah, amazing guy. He was doing a pop-up shop in Japan all the way from Oxford, if you can believe that. And then we've also, just quickly before we get into the episode, we've got exciting news about sponsorship. What is that, Claire?
Oh yeah, this is pretty incredible. We'd love to announce, we're delighted that we've got our very, very first sponsor. We are very particular about who sponsors us, and we'd love to work with any companies out there, but they have to believe in this whole regenerative world. And Fielden, they're a whiskey company. So obviously we're, it is alcohol, but we are, if you're going to drink alcohol, we think, why not drink something that is really is looking after the soil, looking after the land, looking after the farmers. They've gone on a big journey. It's a small fledgling company with deep passion. I am not a whiskey drinker, but I can tell you I had a smell and it is exquisite. And my dad and my other half are passionate, and they know a lot about it, and they have given it the full thumbs up. Rich, I believe you've tried some too. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I don't drink that much whiskey, but I was fortunate enough to try it, and it's really full of flavour. And I did gift it to my brother for his birthday. Although now that we've got this sponsorship, there is a discount code, which is Soil10, so you can get 10% off. However, I did purchase it for full price for my brother, because that's what love is, right? Okay, well, without further delay, let's welcome you to Unground, the world of coffee. Welcome, everybody, to 6 Inches of Soil, the podcast, where we explore the deep connections between farming, soil health, and the future of our food. Today, we're diving into something that many of us enjoy every single day, coffee. But how often do we stop to think about where it comes from? What impact does the coffee have on the soil, the farmers that grow it, the ecosystem that sustains it? And to help us uncover these answers, we're joined by a group of experts. And I'm going to go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves and answer the question where you fit into the supply chain. So we'll start with you, Roberto, if you'd like to explain who you are and where you fit in the supply chain.
Hello, everybody. Talking about regenerative and talking about soil and talking about productivity, quality stuff these days. Yeah, you know, coffee is crazy. The market is over $4 a pound. Never seen this in almost 40 years of being in the market. First time in my life. What's going on is the weather has been affected so bad. The productivity is very unsafe, unpredictable. Market or the roasters were kind of comfortable because they had reports that the coffee production was going to be even according to the consumption. And in the last month, they knew that that was not right. We can see here, well, it's mainly Brazil is the one who moves the markets up and down drastically. But what we can say from this side in Costa Rica is exactly the same situation. We were expecting a big, nice crop. Now we are in the harvesting season, and most of the producers say that we're going to be 30-40% less than they expected. Some of the crop fell down because of the late rains, and some of the cherries didn't ripe. So the market that's not coffee for the market, and it's empty cherries. So the yield of coffee is very poor. What can we do? Hope maybe you have the answer.
Yeah, well, we can definitely talk about it. So that's Roberto Mata, who is a coffee grower in Costa Rica. And next we'll come on to Gali, who has helped introduce us to Roberto. So Gali, do you want to introduce who you are and where you fit into the coffee supply chain?
So I'm Gali Meyer from Buena Vida Specialty Coffee. We work with over 600 coffee growers in Costa Rica through mainly 27 main growers. Roberto is one of those amazing growers. We work with only regenerative coffee, regenerative and organic, but mostly regenerative coffee, all certified by Regenerative with Gabe Brown and is farmers, agronomists. And the idea is that we work from seed to cup. The reason I mentioned that they're certified and that it is part of Regenerative is because we work with the farmers as if we were part of their operation. We help them with regenerative agriculture, understanding how to increase quality, lower inputs, lower costs, make it a profitable business for them, because over 80% of the farmers live on the poverty line or below today. And as Roberto said, this year is extremely challenging due to weather, markets, and labor. We have serious labor issues that are also affecting. So Buena Vida comes in as a virtual cooperative to help farmers in that part of the value chain. And then with the commerce, with all the part of how to sell that coffee at a premium. Because as we know, even organic doesn't get the right premiums. Even organic or certified or Regenerative certified does not get the premiums that it needs to get. So we're there to create awareness for customers and companies that what they buy has to be responsible, and it cannot be any more marketing gimmicks. Fair trade is not fair, Rainforest Alliance is not deep enough, and we can go on to all the certifications. So we decided that we're going to let the soil speak and not us. And we can only do that through a series of 65 tests that we do with Regenerative. And if you speak to Regenerative, they will tell you we are even policing what they're doing because we want to go even deeper for the producers and for the soil, because we are truly soil and farmer first. So we really work the whole value chain, Richard, and really from seed to cup, and everything is verifiable, transparent. Anyone can come see, anyone can copy. We want the whole world to work that way. None of it is an inside secret. As you all know, it's as old as dirt, and the solution is truly under our feet. So we have to support soil and farmer if we want coffee. We'll have 50% less coffee by 2050. And people don't dimension that. They talk about it. As Roberto said, the price is skyrocketing. Unfortunately, almost no one is buying. The buy has slowed down drastically. And I'm trying to think, is it a game? Is it a game by the big buyers to let the market skyrocket? They wait to buy, and then it will tank because farmers are desperate. They can barely make it. So we need to create a transparency mechanism for a new coffee industry. And I think what specialty coffee and Buena Vida specialty coffee is doing is marrying the right ideas with reality. The specialty coffee industry is still indexed to the market, commodities market. We need to separate them. So we're working on a new industry.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with you, Gali. And we've got many more questions to dive deep into that. And so finally, let's meet Heather Terry. Heather, if you introduce who you are and where you fit into the supply chain in the coffee world.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Clara and Richard, for having me today. I am Heather Terry. I am the founder and CEO of Good Sam Foods in the United States. Lots of our customers know us because the big words on our packaging are small farms, which is exactly who we work with. We work with smallholder farmers and indigenous communities, primarily in the global South, but we do work with some farmers in the Central Valley in California. We actually span 5 different value chains: coffee, chocolate, nuts, and fruit. We're nationally distributed in the United States, very scalable, regenerative model. We are a guaranteed off-taker, right? We go into the countries and the communities that we work with. We make them a part of our team. We give them a seat at the table. We give them a voice in terms of how resources and business is run. And there might be some surprises from Good Sam in the next year or so on how we run our governance as it relates to farmers. So stay tuned for that. I think we're going to do a couple things that will maybe shock the industry on that side, but for the good. Because to Gali's point, we really believe that every business should run this way. And in fact, we can't afford not to, right? So the extractive methods of multinationals and very large corporations are not sustainable long-term. In fact, it is our firm belief that those multinationals and those large companies that are in those extractive models will fail in the next 10 to 15 years because of things like climate change, which are directly affecting the topic that we have here today, which is coffee. And what's interesting about that is that in the United States and Europe in particular, what we would classify as the global north, we love coffee. We love it. We love it. We love it. We can't get enough of it. And yet, I think what's so interesting about coffee in particular, and again, we work in 4 different value chains. Coffee in particular is that it's so popular and we are so vitally dependent on it that consumers are going to be forced into this conversation. And I think they're already being forced in this conversation. To Roberto's point, as we see these prices on shelf continue to escalate, and they will continue to escalate. Now, Richard, you live in Texas. I was in Texas a couple months ago, and I was standing at a coffee kiosk getting a cup of coffee, and it was $7.50. And I was like, what? And I sell coffee, right? So just this ripple through the whole supply to the consumer is going to get so outrageous that it will force consumers into this conversation. It will force consumers to see the realities on the ground and what has happened, right? And then how do we start to support farmers on the ground? Like I said, Good Sam, we're a guaranteed off-taker. We go into the communities, we partner based on values. regenerative systems. We don't certify, but we look for regenerative systems. We look to grow those regenerative systems because we work with smallholders and indigenous in very, very remote areas, especially for our coffee, extraordinarily remote areas that are sometimes even parts of them are inaccessible to our team. We look for those biodiverse systems. We look for synergies in the system. All of Good Sam's products actually link together. So there's a lot of our product portfolio actually grows together in these regenerative systems because we believe that if we truly believe as a company in regeneration, we can't just take one thing from farmers. We either as a company have to take more and everything, or, right, Gally's a coffee company, right? Maybe like she brings other partners to the table. She's like, oh my God, there's cacao here. Like, let me bring in a cocoa company to work together with us. We've got to look at partnerships differently. And to that end, to us, regeneration and regenerative farming is not just about soil. It is about so much more than that. It is about how do we run our business? How do we expand our thinking? How do we challenge the status quo, right? Regeneration is not just one thing. It actually encompasses everything. If we really want to disrupt the status quo, we need more businesses thinking about how they can challenge that system.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. Thank you for sharing that with us. One of the key principles of regenerative agriculture is diversity, and that includes diversity of everything, the whole supply chain and all of the different crops that these farmers will be growing. So I thought a good place to kind of start, Gally, is we've got an exclusive sound clip which you shared with me, and I will play in a sec, but I was wondering if you could kind of tee it up to explain a little bit about what the clip is we're about to listen to, and maybe help people imagine in their minds what they would be looking at if they were looking at Roberto's farm and how this clip came about. So do you want to introduce it?
Of course, and it's a great segue from what Heather said, because regeneration is not just about the soil and it's not just about the farmer, it's about a collaborative ecosystem. And nothing will survive on its own. We're not a monoculture anymore. And we've been a monoculture in business. It's been a very greedy business. It's been a very me-centered business. And it's time to turn back. Like Heather said, we all work with smallholder farms. We all work with indigenous communities because they are the keepers of the land. And they are the ones who truly mitigate climate and have the solutions. So Heather's point was to this clip that we're going to watch. If we're all going to regenerate, we all have to work together and create a healthy ecosystem. When we did the Regenified verifications in different farms, we partner up with another company called Costa And Costa measures the soil activity and the microbial activity and all the ecosystem below, the soil. Everything, the 6 inches of soil they take in, and they really harness all the sounds that the earth actually emits as opposed to us humans. Same with the plants. They clip very sophisticated equipment to what do the plants emit as sound and how do they talk to each other. And we all know treetops connect, roots connect. It's an entire ecosystem that we don't know enough of and we need more preview to. So what you're going to listen to is a meditation that was produced from those recordings. And now you're able to get your cup of coffee and meditate to the sounds of that region. The good news is you can make it up because it has to be from the soil. So one of the things that we can talk more in the podcast after the clip is, everybody today uses the word regenerative. It's the most prostituted word ever. Like it used to be sustainable. Now it's regenerative. Everyone's regenerative. But like Heather pointed out, it's a philosophy of life. And you can tell in 5-minute conversation who's regenerative and who's not. When you look at how you work with your partners, how you work with your farmers, how you work with the soil, you can already pass or fail the test. It's pretty easy because regenerative speaks for itself. So I think that these recordings will help the entire population get connected to the farm in a much deeper level with their coffee to understand the whole supply chain and really get connected spiritually and mentally and not just, with your mind.
All right. So with that, let's hold hands together and listen to this and see what you think. feeling relaxed now.
It's so cool because honestly, Richard, that's what it's like to be on a coffee farm, right? Like there's the mist and there's a coolness to it, and it's sort of magical. I don't know, Galliant, Roberto, you have a farm. I mean, it's a magical place, coffee farms. There's like kind of a mystical, spiritual feeling to those places. The ones that are not factory farmed, the ones that are not these big plantations, they're very, it is a very, very peaceful place.
Yeah, and I think my friend Josh, who was actually down on your farm, Roberto, a couple of weeks ago, the question that he had that I think you're in a great position to answer is, what have you noticed about conventional coffee growing compared to regenerative coffee growing? Like, maybe help the listeners understand kind of what the differences are, and especially for you, like, how did you decide to get into this journey and get more into the agroforestry?
You can see it, the difference. Looking at how the coffee plantations are producing, how they look, it's simple. A conventional coffee farm now is here in Costa Rica. Sounds terrible, but it's kind of disaster. The trees cannot afford the drastic changes of the climate. I can hear the trees telling me that this is almost the end. When Heather said she's going to pay $7 for a cup of coffee, I would say get ready to pay $10 for a cup of coffee. That's the situation. But if you are a small coffee farmer, that we have many here, so Heather, you are talking about people, please, let's keep walking heart to heart. And you are ahead a little bit. We're only 10 years trying to do more sustainable activity. You have many years. It doesn't matter that the product you are producing, the way you treat the soil is a transition, a mentally transition between what is being done and what has to be done in the future. And that's the biggest problem here, because they have been experimenting this speech forever. All the sales companies of coffee supplies, they say, okay, this is the key, that you are gonna start producing double per hectare, healthy, good crop, good cup of coffee. This is a very old speech. Certainly never works. So I was talking yesterday to the biggest producer of the region here, and he said, oh, I don't believe in these romantic stories. And he's the biggest. Then I went to him and I said, how's your productivity? And he told me, it's coming down and down and down. Now I'm at the break point, not losing money. We were in front of one of our coffee plantations here where I live, by the mill. And he said, what are you doing with this coffee plantation? Then I told him, he said, looks okay. But, the change has to be done mentally. But we need a product to keep on producing coffee. We need, and maybe Heather, they have found something that we could use, we could do, we could produce, because sustainability, see, I have 5 grandchildren. They want to be in coffee, but they say, Abue, we don't want to lose money. We don't want to go through the problems you have. So, and ask them, what are you going to do? Say, if coffee doesn't work, just leave the activity. And that's what's going on in Costa Rica. We're coming down from 3.8 million bags to 1.8 million bags. And this is the similar situation all over. Only Brazil is going up, but there is a different story. But we have to be very focused on producing high quality coffee and very good productivity by hectare. And that's the only way my family can keep producing coffee, as I have been in the 3 last generations. We have to really think and hit the point. What are we going to tell the people? The first question they say, well, okay, you're telling me that we gotta be regenerative. What do I have to do? That's not easy. It's not easy. Mine, soil, coffee trees, everything has to go through a transition. So education is key, technology is key, it's confusion. Now the market is in our side, but once there's enough coffee in the world, it will go down for sure. This is not sustainable. So we have moved, as Gali said, to a direct trade market, selling direct to to the roasters, and then we have been sitting nowadays. We're given then, even according to some preparations, coffees around sea market level, even below a little bit, because we need them, because they have been supporting us when the price was 50% that is now. And this is the formula. Once we find somebody to pay a fair price to our coffee, then we will go for the different second step, which is sustainability or regenerative, or you can call it whatever. Keep the soil alive and be happy, and then we can resist climate change.
I think Roberto made two very important points that we should all concentrate, especially your listeners, which is the market price can go up to all record high. The producers are still getting 3 to 7 cents on a cup of coffee. 3 to 7 cents. The cup of coffee can go to $7, can go to $10, can go to $15. Most farmers will still get the 7 cents. The industry is broken, and it's breaking our farmers, and it's breaking our soil. One of the things that we talk to Roberto a lot is he has 5 children, 5 grandchildren. The farm that Roberto has is an incredible regenerative farm. It's like, I call it like it's a dream for most people. Shade grown, healthy plants, healthy coffee, healthy mindset of Roberto. Roberto was for 22 years the general manager for Copedota, which is they put the cooperative on a pedestal, like the top cooperative in Costa Rica, representing 1,000 farmers. The cooperatives model today does not represent farmers. They represent buyers. The advice they give farmers is agrochemicals. We will sell you that drug. We will finance that drug. We will give you free samples because we need higher yield. We need to make more money as a seller. And the philosophy we're trying to change with regenerative agriculture is it's not just about the soil. It's about a philosophy of life. Like Heather said, if we don't all cooperate, if we don't all grow together, we will fail. This is not a one person's effort. This is not a one company effort. It has to be a whole new ecosystem supporting farmer and soil first and showing the transparency. I think most consumers don't understand that the farmer gets 5 to 7 cents. They think they're probably getting half or 20% or whatever it is. So we need to create awareness and education, one, because there are 2 coffee industries. There's the conventional coffee industry, the maquila coffee, the coffee that anyone can pick whatever. They're mechanized pickers. There's machines that pick coffee. And that coffee is of low quality. Most of the cherry gets picked green. It's just a whole different industry. And that's what the market price represents, that industry. The specialty coffee, the smallholder farm that Heather, Roberto, and I are in that ecosystem, there's no mechanization. It's labor. It's most of the time lack of labor, intense labor. I offer any listener who wants to come pick coffee for a day to come. It's the hardest job in the world, picking coffee. It's the sun, the snakes, the mosquitoes, the altitude, the topography, all the million other factors. So no, coffee is not a commodity. I have no idea who invented that term, but coffee is definitely not a commodity. And now the market is learning a lesson. It's not a commodity, so we are going to have a big shortage of it.
Yeah, and Roberto mentioned a mental transition, Heather, in the coffee producers and everyone down the line. You've probably seen progress in changing mindsets. I was wondering if you had examples of stories that you could share regarding that kind of mental shift. But Heather, before we get to the answer, we'll be right back. Take it away, Tilly.
6 inches of soil is made possible by...
Fielden is the English whiskey that's changing farming for the better. Field by field, harvest by harvest. Fielden is bringing England's fields back to life with diverse grains that thrive naturally. No sprays, no artificial fertilizers, no shortcuts. It's no chem, regen. Regenerative farming without chemicals. The result? Healthy soils, clean waters, flourishing biodiversity, a smaller carbon footprint, and whiskey full of flavour. Think warm, flaky pastry, butter and caramel. Fields full of life, whiskey full of flavour. Visit fielden.com, FIELDEN, and remember to drink responsibly.
Back to you, Daddy.
You've probably seen progress in changing mindsets. I was wondering if you had examples of stories that you could share regarding that kind of mental shift.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think first of all, on farm, you're always dealing with trust issues. Why should they trust us now? Because the realities of this industry and of all commoditized industry, Gally's right. Nothing is really a commodity. We just made it so. We made this up, right? So like this was something to get a bunch of rich guys a lot richer. That's what commodities are, everyone. So we made it up. We all buy into it. Because we all continue to buy into it, it exists. Yeah. And to Gally's point, like it will break at some point. This whole idea of coffee in particular, I think it'll be the first one to go. Coffee being a commodity versus coffee being a specialty, right? Because there just won't be enough at some point if we keep going the route that we go. So the realities of the industry should outrage us. Because the commodities and the injustices in them is one of the greatest kept secrets, especially in the United States. The injustice of what's happening here, for a long time, it was just worker exploitation. It was just brokers going into the system and exploiting it, and what I call smoking out farmers, waiting up against the commodity price where they had no buyers, no guaranteed off takers in order to get a lower price, in order to get your bottom of the barrel grocery store coffee on the market in a place like the US. There are a lot of systems failures in this. Organic is statistically a failure. Only 1.6% of all arable land in the entire world is organic. We failed organic as a species, right? We love to see the shiny new toy. What's the new thing that we can work on, right? And Gally's right. There is a prostitution around the word regenerative, because will regenerative become the next organic? This is what farmers are looking to us who are in the marketplace to have not happen. They're like, why should I do this? I did organic failed. Why are you asking me to do this now? You guys failed us the first time. You said organic was going to be the big thing. It was going to work. It was going to save us. It didn't. We have to be careful about that. And the whole system is connected, right? Everything is connected. Low wages to quality to price, right? All of it is connected. And we can't forget that things like policy really have to change in countries in order to support this work as well. And that investors, I'm sure there are some investors listening to 6 Inches of Soil. You all have to stop looking for sexy high-tech solutions here. Indigenous communities, smallholder farmers hold the knowledge of these solutions, and they are very low tech. They are very possible. They are very simple, as a matter of fact. So stop chasing the next shiny object and start supporting what really works on the ground. And it's not going to come from a machine. It's just not. We those of us that sit on the ground, my team is on the ground 6 months of the year. We have employees from Good Sam on the ground, myself included, right? I try to visit all of our communities at least once a year. The team is in there a lot more than I am, but I'm out there as a CEO so that I don't forget when I'm in that boardroom what's really important, right? It's important to get leadership out to these places, because when you talk to investors, when you talk to CEOs, when you talk to leaders in the industry, and they've never seen a farm, they see a picture of a Good Sam farm, they're like, is that a farm or is that a forest? Well, it is a forest, because that's really where food should be coming from. That's really where we get the best outcome, right? And we should be supporting farmers in every capacity that we can to build those food forests, to build that resilience in the supply. But stop trying to make it come from tech. That's how we build trust. We build trust through common sense. We build trust through listening. We build trust by partnering. We build trust by showing up and actually delivering what we say. Golden rule at Good Sam is never promise a community or a farmer anything that we cannot keep, because they have been sold a bill of goods over, not just decades, but centuries from white colonialists in particular, of what beautiful, brilliant things are going to come to them if you just do it the way we say to. That bill of goods, right? That promise to them is bull. I'm not going to swear on your podcast, guys, but it's bull. It's baloney. They know it, and they're weary and they're tired. And the other thing that we have to remember is that the average age of a farmer worldwide is 65 years old. That should terrify every person on the planet. Every single person on the planet should be terrified by this, because it means that we are losing farmers. And to Roberto's point, his 5 grandchildren are like, we want to do this, but we need to live. We need to be able to sustain ourselves. We've got to think in whole systems. We've got to think in solutions that really are challenging the status quo, because status quo thinking is zero expansion. Roberto, the guy who came to your farm and was the conventional farmer and was just like, well, this is the way things have to be, right? Like this is the way things have to be in both on the farm, in grocery, all the way from the top to the bottom. This is the way things have to be is the status quo, is limited thinking. It gets us nowhere. Regenerative thinking is expansive thinking. It's about saying, hey, we might not get there today, but what is one thing that we can do? What's one action we can take to move this in the right direction? When we're not doing that, we're extractive, we're destructive. And the other thing that I would say here and Roberto, I want to thank you for what you said, because I think it's really, really beautiful what you said. You said, I want us to walk heart to heart. We need to walk heart to heart. Instead of mind to mind or brain to brain or dollar to dollar. What we forget in the Northern Hemisphere in particular is that farmers actually control this. They control our food. They control our state of being and living. They provide the food. They are the richest people in the world. And it's somehow we've convinced them that they're the lowest on the totem pole, but they're not. Right? So that's the big joke. That's another thing we made up. That's another thing that we've all subscribed to and been okay with. And buy into over and over and over again. I'd ask the audience then, to that vein in all of this and everything that I just said, to think of how important coffee is to you. Think of every morning, your morning ritual, sharing coffee with friends in a coffee shop, which of course in the US and the UK is a huge, huge thing. Hey, you want to get together? Let's get together for a cup of coffee. Don't take that for granted. There are real people behind that. Think about when you sit down to have that coffee in the morning, you sit down to have that coffee with a friend or a colleague, you take a coffee break. Who and what had to come together to do that? When I see cheap products on the shelf, when I see cheap things in grocery retail, I often turn to the person I'm shopping with, and even my daughter who's 11 years old, and I said, how many people do you think had to suffer for that price? Because that's the reality. How many people had to suffer for that price? That includes the farmer, of course, but it also typically includes brands, because brands hold the bag on the financials that are required to get that product on shelf. And by the way, that's not big brands. That's small and medium-sized enterprises. That's small entrepreneurs. That's small companies who are trying to do the right thing, right? Because they have to pay a lot more to get their higher priced item on the shelf than that multinational, that big corporation that's peddling a whole load of really low quality crap.
Sorry, Heather, but I think we all need to start thinking of how do you find success? And I think the biggest issue now that we're facing from everything you just said is, how do you define success? Because we're teaching our children in school that success is money and power. There is no heart to heart. Mental health is through the roof because they need to chase something in the worst of ways to prove success. So when Roberto's grandchildren are going to measure success, they're going to have to measure against money and power, as opposed to growing things, being regenerative, working in a community, working collectively. When you look at indigenous, the ceremonies that we've given up, the community building that we've given up, all that has a huge price. Yes, you're right. It's not in a bag on a shelf. It's in us. It's in the mental health that we're harvesting. It's in the disjointed politics that are occurring all over the world. It's about the lack of democracies because there's no education. So we got to go back to basics that goes beyond agriculture. But who doesn't want a beautiful piece of land like Roberto's to work barefoot on, to listen to a gorgeous meditation, to calm the mind and harness the family life, harness what we're cultivating in our kids, in our future. We're not doing it anymore. Everybody's running off to a career, to a money path, to something that nobody understands. When you're on the farm, you hear coherence between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. They know coherence that most humans don't. So when you drink that cup of coffee, question your coherence.
Yeah. What is the difference between a regenerative coffee farm compared to an industrial coffee farm? If you're standing and looking at both of them, what would a listener notice as they saw those two side by side?
That's such a great question. We just finished a 2-week verification with Regenerative, and we've been to 24 different farms. Extremely different farm. There's very little points of in common between those farms. And when you walk through the gate of the farm, you can immediately tell that they're regenerative. And you can immediately tell from 1 to 10 how regenerative they are, or whether they're in transition or fully regenerative. You're walking into shade-grown coffees. You're walking into a lot of different varieties around the coffee tree. You can see the soil covering. You can see the other things that are grown. Like Heather and Roberto said, the philosophy of the farmer, the way they're looking at cultivating is a huge part of regenerative agriculture.
And also, just to be clear, because maybe some people don't really think about it, they recognize coffee as being that brown seed, but what does it look like on the tree? It's called a cherry, is that right?
So it's a cherry, and it has different colors throughout its growth. It starts at very green and needs to turn completely wine color to be picked. Everything in between is less specialty, less quality, less nutrient dense. When you do regenerative agriculture, one of the incredible benefits beyond the biodiversity of the ecosystem, of the different animals and the different plants that are growing, is the nutrient density of that cherry, because the flavors determine the quality of the cup. 90% of people out there have never tasted coffee, Richard. The difference between conventional coffee and regenerative or regenerative organic coffee is that conventional coffee is really very low quality beans. And you're able to process low quality beans because, as we said before, you're roasting it to the point of no recognition. You can blend them, you can blend farms, you can blend origins, you can put whatever you want, and the consumer will not be able to recognize the difference between one coffee or another. Today, the entire world, there's not one country that does not produce incredible coffee. Farmers have learned to produce incredible coffee no matter where they are. The difference is that the majority of the buyers are not letting farmers understand what their coffee tastes like or the quality of their coffee, because it's a negotiation tool. The more ignorant the farmer, the better negotiation power they have. One of the things that we need to do for the future of coffee, for securing the future of coffee, is go back to origin and help educate farmers what their coffee tastes like and why is their coffee so good.
So with that, you transition to flavor a bit. I've got 2 questions from a chef who sent these to me. So I'm going to play the question now, and if you could help me answer them, that would be great. So this is from Chef Paddy in South Carolina. This is his first question.
Hi, Richard. I hope you're well. My question for you guys is the fruity flesh part of the coffee berries. Is that part edible? And if so, what are the flavor profiles of that like? Are there any cool coffee products being made with that part of the berry as well?
It's a complex question that I'm going to make it very short. The variety of the coffee, the nutrients that you give the plant, and the more nature-based solutions will enhance the flavor of that cherry. The cherry is completely edible. Many people make tea, and in the East, they pay very well for that delicious tea from the dry, what we call cascara, which is the outer layer of that cherry. And it really depends on the processing of the coffee. The farmer gets credited with a lot of the growing, but also a lot of the processing. So when you go visit Roberto Mata's farm, you will see a lot of different drying beds on the floor in African beds. And he has very different ways to dry the coffee. And the different ways highlight different flavors and notes of the coffee that's going to be served. So, as I said before, the flavor that we know, because Roberto, Heather, and I spent so much time on the farms, is very different than what most consumers know, because it has to go back to the growing and processing.
So that's the seed, but what about the flesh? Like, what happens to that fleshy bit? Does that get used for anything, or does that get...
A lot of companies in the United States have actually tried to use cascara as a beverage alternative. It hasn't been super successful. It actually does taste pretty good. It's usually a much lighter flavor when they process cascara. Some companies we've seen tried to ferment it into booze. Like, there's a lot of different ways, but primarily, and Roberto can talk about this, I think, cascara becomes compost, and it's very, very nutrient rich for the soil. That's its primary use, is for the bean to get extracted from the cascara, and then for that cascara to break down, and then for that compost to get reapplied within the system, whether it be on coffee trees or other products around the farm.
It's used also as food for chicken and other poultry, pigs, etc. But the majority of the farmer's dream is to use it for tea, because it brings in another big revenue stream, and the tea is delicious. It is really a whole different product. It's very rich in flavor. Like Heather said, it's lighter than coffee, but when you're getting used to sipping it, it is absolutely insanely delicious.
I mean, we may be forced into that, right? Like, as a market, because coffee yields are going down so aggressively. So a lot of companies have tried it. Many have failed spectacularly in trying to do it. But I think in light of the climate issues, we may see some more of these cascara and even cacao pod, cacao tea, which is from the outside of the cacao bean when they winnow off the kind of flaky part of cacao, that also being brewed into tea, because there's just such a demand in the market, but there won't be enough yield moving forward.
That's really cool to know that. I didn't know that. And Roberto, with that in mind and the composting aspect that Gali just mentioned, what does your soil kind of look like and feel like, and how have you noticed that changing?
Yeah, it's been, I had many shade trees, including banana trees and some other trees we use like for eat at home, some fruits like avocados, oranges, mangoes, whatever, but mainly, and we also have a special tree, is a leguminous. So they take nitrogen and fix it, and it goes to the ground. So when you go to one of my plantations, you see many products, organic products from the trees, from the shade trees. That's the way it looks. And start to integrate life. It's a complete cycle. Bacteria, fungus, whatever, worms. It's a real wildlife. And so it's a lot of oxygen in the ground. That gives the idea. We were checking how many worms in about, let's say, 5 square inches. We found 8 worms. If that tells you that is a soil alive. But it looks also very different than some other farms. Some people make fun of me because the old days they thought that a farm looking that way is not a good cafetal. It was just an abandoned plantation. But if you go and look how the production is, how the quality of the cherries is, how the cup profile, because we sell cup profile. We don't sell coffee, see? And then the people starts to understand, and the shade. Now, one of the biggest problems about the global warming is the sunlight is, it's high intensity. You can feel it in your skin. So putting a filter with vegetal, then you also controls amount of sunlight, you're controlling the photosynthesis, you're protecting the evaporation of the moisture of the ground. It's are many components together. Just planting trees and shade trees in the cafetales. Doesn't matter what kind of trees. Doesn't matter really. Better trees are the original trees, but if you don't have them available, just plant whatever you want, a banana tree or whatever. It'll work.
One last question to all of you, keeping it brief. What is one thing that you want consumers to think about the next time they reach for their morning cup of joe? Heather, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I want them to think about what type of coffee they're buying, how much they paid for it, and again, who might be suffering because of what they've paid for their coffee. I mean, we don't link those things very often. We take it for granted. We think that these crops are going to be around forever. You know, cacao also is in serious danger of becoming extinct because of low yields in West Africa, which is what dictates the market. Not right. Exactly, Roberto, right? The Brazil is dictating your price, that Ivory Coast and Ghana are dictating the whole cocoa market. It's an outdated system, right? But we as consumers really can control that, right, by what we spend. In addition to that, we can also control that by what we waste and what we don't waste, right? When you pay a low price for something at the grocery store, it is expendable. It can just be thrown away. We do that very often in the United States. In the United States, we are one of the worst offenders of methane because of the food we throw away. Coffee is no exception to that. When we throw those things away and we devalue them because we paid too little money for them, we are contributing to the climate crisis, which again, this is all connected. So think about what you're paying for food, how much of it you're actually consuming, and how much of it you're throwing away, right? And that goes for coffee too.
Yeah, that's wonderful closing thoughts. I love that from you. Roberto, what's the one thing you would like consumers to think about when they're drinking their coffee?
What coffee are you drinking? Health is important for everybody, mostly for what you eat and drink. So just look at the kind of coffees you're drinking. If you have no information about the origin of a coffee, no traceability, must be a good reason for not to give any information about that product. So if you go to a place and you can see a single origin coffee and they tell the story how it's being produced, milled, and even roasted, then you can trust that product. Even a bag of coffee with traceability, you can trust it. No traceability must be a reason again for not to give any information about what are you drinking. So watch out.
Thank you so much, Roberto. Well, what a perfect way to kind of round it out. Before we finish, Gally, what's the one thing that you would like consumers to think about when they're drinking their cup of coffee?
I think Heather and Roberto summarized it beautifully. Traceability and also accountability. 95% of the world coffee is filled with agrochemicals. We need consumers to go out and start learning about the coffee industry. They need to get educated. They cannot listen to marketing gimmicks. They cannot be looking at the beautiful packaging. Like Heather said, more than the packaging, it's what's in it and who's making it, who's producing it. Is a lot more important whether the packaging is beautiful or not. Is the packaging compostable? Really, how can you buy coffee that comes in metal or plastic? I mean, it just goes against all the future of growing coffee. If we're going to regenerate, if we're going to take care of our very hurting planet, we need to think about the packaging in what is the packaging? It cannot be in metal. It cannot be in plastic. It has to be healthy coffee in a healthy container. Also, like Heather said before, you know, if we're going to use the coffee as compost, it better not be burnt coffee and coffee filled with agrochemicals. So we want to do the whole cycle. The only way is educating ourselves. And don't believe anyone. Don't even believe Heather, Roberto, and I. Go do your own research. Go and find out. Today with ChatGPT, today with all the sources, there is so much information. Do your research. Understand how to investigate. It's really important.
And I don't know if you've got time for one last question, I know, but I'd love to just learn a bit more about the fair trade label. I think people assume that fair trade means that everything gets split evenly. We've already established that's not the case, but can you very briefly just summarize the fair trade versus direct to farmer relationship? Heather, I know you talk about it on your website. It would be super interesting just to get a very brief kind of overview from somebody who knows.
Fair trade has been significantly diluted over the years. I mean, what started out as a certification that had a lot of integrity, has a lot of groups operating within it now. A lot of farmers will tell you, it's a bill of goods. A lot of fair trade groups are forcing outcomes on farm, saying like, well, you need a well, you need a community center, you need a this, you need a that. They don't give the farmers a real democratic place at the table, which is really unfortunate. I think also in chocolate in particular, there's something called mass balance, where they actually take all of the fair trade certified and non-fair trade certified, and they put it all together. And then the brands have to label mass balance. The brands get a discount on that. Let's be really clear. Like, this is not brands being forced into this, right? So there are brands, especially in the US, that are labeling mass balance on chocolate products that are saying, yeah, we'll take a little kickback so that we don't have to pay as much to be in that mass balance system. And what that means is only a certain percent, they can't even guarantee a certain percentage is in that product. They say, we contract fair trade certified beans, but they're mixed up with everything else. And maybe they're in there and maybe they're not, right? And to me, that's kind of like the same system, right? That really is impeding us. Like it's saying like some people will do it right and some people won't. And so we all just have to go into this mishmash together. I mean, look, I think there's been an inherent mistrust of fair trade in the entire supply network. I think farmers are very, they're not psyched about it anymore. But it does work in some instances. I can't say that it's completely defunct everywhere. I just think it's a really, really broken system.
Well, I think we have evidence that it's extremely broken because 80% of farmers live on the poverty line or below.
Yeah.
So if there was fair trade, that wouldn't be the case. Also, we need to redefine what is fair trade because there's a very difference. Fair trade is based on market price. It means that the buyers are paying above market price. But we just said market price is based on a fictitious commodities market, and it does not represent prosperity prices for farmers. So fair trade means different things to different people. And as Heather said, it is completely, it's gone. It doesn't mean anything. When you go into the farms and ask the farmers, are you being paid fair trade? Most of them will start laughing. It is just a label that's good for those who buy it. And like Heather said, in coffee, it's called combo contracts. I buy 2 containers of fair trade and 10 containers of non-fair trade, send them together, and I will label it fair trade or farmer prosperity or whatever. These are just labels. There's got to be a lot more transparency to those things. Again, proof is in the pudding. We wouldn't have 80% of our farmers living on the poverty line or below if any of those labels were actually working.
Yeah. True. All right. Well, thank you for answering that bonus question. So as Heather said, let's build food forests. And in the words of Roberto Matta, keep the soil alive and be happy. Well, soil mates, that was Unground, the world of coffee. Thank you so much for listening. I just wish our guests were a little bit more passionate. Wow, I was just bowled over by how much everybody really cared about their role in trying to connect the coffee drinker back to the actual farmer and provide a better livelihood, a better future for them. And personally, I was left feeling, it was definitely a little bit depressing thinking about how big the world of coffee is, but also really encouraging that there are people out there that are doing their best to look out for us and for the farmer and for the soil. But what do you think, Claire?
Yeah, it's just, for me, absolutely blew my mind because I thought I knew a bit about food. And I'm probably going to say this every single time we have another guest on, but for coffee, it's, as they both say, or they all say, it's something that we automatically have in our days. But actually, what really struck me is it shouldn't be a commodity, it should be a luxury good. And we have stepped so far away from that with sort of crazy commodity markets and treating it in a way it shouldn't be treated. So I just now can have deep respect every time I drink coffee. But more importantly, just hearing from Roberto, you know, beautiful soul in Costa Rica, just really connecting with someone on the ground, which again, not enough of us are ever going to be able to do, especially in the UK. We're a million miles away from where we grow coffee. So just hearing that, and I was shaken when Heather said that thing about there are snakes, it's hot, there are mosquitoes, it's grim. I just love to put us all in that so we could really, really understand. But I think it is wonderful there are these people that are illuminating it, and hopefully people feel the same, that we're bringing these people to podcasts, and that it's really important for us when we can. Not everyone can, because we know from what they're saying is that we should be paying significantly or so much more for our coffee, and that is not going to be for everyone. But let's hope that the campaigning these sort of people and we're doing can enable it, things to get better for everybody.
Yeah, totally. And by getting better for everybody, just understanding how much of a positive effect you can have as a coffee drinker with your choices to try to support the work that Heather and Gally and Roberto are all doing in the regenerative coffee world, which is still relatively new, just getting that recognition for the farmer all the way through to the coffee drinker. But hopefully by listening, you've got a slightly better understanding of how it all works. And we're really excited for part 2, where we get deeper with a barista based in Oxford, England. Marcus is his name, from a company called Roots, where we'll really kind of explore that connection too. So hopefully you can join us for that soon. And thanks again for listening. See you soon.